War is always expensive, but a war between the United States and Iran could become one of the most expensive conflicts in modern history. In just the first few days of recent military operations, analysts estimated that the United States spent billions of dollars on airstrikes, missiles, and military operations. And that raises a shocking question. What would happen if the conflict didn't end quickly? What if it expanded into a full-scale war involving the United States, Iran, and possibly other countries in the region? How much money would that actually cost? Could it reach hundreds of billions of dollars, or even a trillion? If you are watching this video, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. And don't forget to subscribe for more insights about money and the global economy. Because the financial cost of war is something most people never truly see. Behind every missile launch, every aircraft deployment, every military base, there is an enormous price tag. In fact, early estimates suggest that modern combat operations in the region can cost close to $1 billion per day during intense phases of fighting. And that's only the beginning. When you include military equipment, economic disruption, oil markets, and long-term veteran care, the true cost of war becomes far larger than most people imagine. So today, we're asking a massive question. If the United States fought a full war with Iran, how much would it actually cost? And who would ultimately pay the bill?
Modern wars are incredibly expensive. Every piece of military equipment used in combat carries a massive price tag. A single Tomahawk cruise missile can cost millions of dollars. Advanced fighter jets cost tens of millions each. Strategic bombers cost billions to build and maintain. When these systems are used in large numbers, the costs rise extremely quickly. During the early stages of the recent Iran conflict, analysts estimated that the United States spent roughly $3.7 billion within the first 100 hours of fighting. That means nearly $900 million per day during intense operations. And that figure only includes direct military operations. It does not include long-term costs. It also does not include economic disruption. If a war lasted several weeks or months, the numbers could grow dramatically. Some economic models estimate that the direct military cost alone could reach $65 billion and potentially as high as $95 billion if the conflict expanded. And that's only the operational cost. Military wars also require replacing destroyed equipment, maintaining global military deployments, transporting supplies across continents, supporting thousands of troops. These costs accumulate rapidly. In other words, modern warfare burns through money almost as fast as it burns through ammunition. But even those numbers might only represent a fraction of the true cost, because the biggest financial impact of war often comes outside the battlefield.
Military spending is only one part of the equation. Wars also disrupt the global economy. And when a conflict involves a region as strategically important as the Middle East, the economic impact can spread worldwide. One of the biggest risks is energy disruption. The Middle East remains one of the most important regions for global oil supply. Any conflict involving Iran could affect shipping routes, energy production, and international trade. When energy prices rise, the effects ripple through the entire global economy. Transportation becomes more expensive, manufacturing costs increase, food prices can even rise because farming depends heavily on fuel and fertilizer. Economists estimate that the broader economic impact of a prolonged conflict with Iran could reach as much as $210 billion for the United States alone, once trade disruption and market reactions are included. Stock markets also react strongly to geopolitical tensions. Investors tend to pull money from risky assets during periods of uncertainty. This can lead to sudden market volatility. Currencies, commodities, and global financial markets can all shift rapidly when war breaks out. Businesses may delay investments. Consumers may reduce spending. These economic reactions can slow economic growth. And when the global economy slows, the financial cost of war becomes much larger than the military budget alone. But even that still doesn't capture the full picture, because some of the largest costs of war appear years after the fighting ends.
The financial cost of war doesn't end when the conflict ends. In many cases, the largest expenses appear years later. One major cost comes from caring for military veterans. Medical care, disability benefits, and long-term support for veterans can continue for decades. Another major cost is interest on war debt. Governments often borrow money to finance military operations. That debt must eventually be repaid, and the interest payments can accumulate over many years. Historical examples show just how expensive wars can become over time. Research from the Costs of War Project estimates that U.S. military operations after the September 11th attacks ultimately cost around $8 trillion when long-term expenses are included. That includes combat operations, veterans care, homeland security spending, and interest on borrowed money. This means that wars which initially appear to cost billions can eventually cost trillions. A prolonged conflict involving the United States and Iran could follow a similar pattern. The initial military operations might cost tens of billions. Economic disruption could push the cost into the hundreds of billions, and long-term obligations could eventually push the total cost far higher. This is why economists often warn that the real cost of war is rarely visible in the first headlines. The financial consequences unfold slowly over decades, and in the end, the bill is often paid not only by governments, but by taxpayers and future generations.